Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Found Friday, a weekly web series dedicated to all things findability related in content, marketing, search, and digital. Ray is at Found Conference in Tokyo, so I'm hosting solo. This week's topic has been growing in relevance for many marketers and continues to come up in conversations of platform choice on a really regular basis. So, the topic is alternative search engines and how they impact your marketing and overall findability. So, when we talk about alternative search engines, what do we mean? Alternative search engines are things like Amazon, YouTube, Facebook, Pinterest, and other platforms that have their own algorithms for determining what content to serve up to their audience. The issue is, it's also your audience. The rise of platforms that determine how to serve up content that you're creating to audiences based on a variety of factors makes findability an even bigger challenge now for brands, products, and services. So let's look at some examples of these search engines a little bit so we can discuss. So Amazon is now becoming kind of the default place that a lot of people go, not just for purchasing, but for product reviews as well. Before they make a purchasing decision about something, they may go to Google, but a lot of times now they're actually going to Amazon to understand and look at ratings and reviews. This is a huge shift in how shopping takes place for consumers and for marketers. Amazon's A9 algorithm serves up products based on a variety of factors, and marketers who are focused on trying to get to that top placement for their product are now focused on things like ratings, reviews, number of reviews, product descriptions, image quality, and more. So, what's still important is understanding what keywords a consumer will use in order to find what they're looking for in terms of products. That means we need Amazon Search Intelligence to know how we should actually craft our product pages within the Amazon Marketplace and which keywords to include in our descriptions and in informational sections. Um, this is now becoming kind of a really specific market for a lot of folks. And because of the huge increase in interest, something that we've developed a platform to address, and we're starting to see a lot of proliferation around Amazon specific agencies, Amazon specific tools, and things like that. So these kind of alternative search engines are really pushing a whole new area of marketing into the space. So Amazon's obviously not the only place where alternative search engines are used. Um, while obviously part of the Google property, YouTube itself serves up their content differently than a traditional search engine would. They utilize their own algorithm to figure out what types of news they should show you or what types of video content that you should consume, and in order of what they will start playing automatically for you next or suggested content. This has actually been in the news a lot lately for political reasons, and a lot of that has been focused around kind of the extreme nature of what YouTube serves up in terms of content and how that may or may not impact people's ability to make choices. Now, outside of the political arena, which this show is not about, are product choices. So if we go on and we're looking for specific information about consumer goods, I know that right now, kind of in the consumer area, the health and beauty area is so big with the YouTube market. If you go in and look some of this stuff up, the types of videos that it recommends to you for content, let's say you're looking for something like, uh, better eyebrows or makeup contouring tricks or something like that, the types of videos that it begins to suggest to you next may impact a lot of your product decision making. So in outside of just being able to purchase ads or promote video content there, the actual algorithm that YouTube is using in order to suggest this different content is hugely impactful on what might steer someone in a different direction. So some other things that we talk about too are things like Pinterest, right? So Pinterest is huge for things like home consumer goods, health, beauty, fashion, um, kind of a lot of this DIY movement area, and things like that, and all the products associated with that. Home improvement has actually seen a huge thing in Pinterest, right? So folks like Home Depot and Lowe's. Uh, a lot of what Pinterest is doing is when you're searching for stuff, the way that they're actually figuring out how to surface this content to you is based on a lot of different things, and that understanding how they're figuring out what content to show you is going to be useful to marketers to be able to figure out when they create Pinterest pages or when they create image content that other folks may pin, understanding how image title tags and image descriptions and things like that are making things more or less findable for their specific audience. This also brings up the use of hashtags. So when we look at things like how people are finding different content, a lot of folks are starting to, kind of just pile on all of these hashtags in hopes that it will stick somewhere. I think that one of the things that we're starting to look at as an industry is whether or not these alternative search engines and the associated algorithms are actually only pulling things from specific hashtags. Obviously, those things may rank more relevantly. So let's say you're doing like a DIY project and you're trying to remodel your bathroom, and you say, okay, I want to do a black and white tile on the floor. So if you do, like if you look up stuff for black and white tile for bathrooms, you may actually type in black and white bathroom tile, or like floor tile, black and white, or bathroom floor tiles, all these different potential search terms. Whether Pinterest shows to you, um, things that have been hashtagged specifically, like bathroom remodel, like bathroom floor tile, etc., may be based on those individual hashtags being correct, but it's also an amalgamation of a bunch of other aspects of the images themselves, the descriptions, and other hashtag combinations that may be used. So as a marketer, we need to be able to understand all the different ways that we can actually go about figuring out how to ensure that our images of bathroom remodels or the tile products that we carry in our home improvement store can be found specifically. So a lot of this goes back to kind of trial and error, which is and some early on experimentation, which a lot of people did to try to figure out kind of how different algorithm aspects work with regards to all content being found by something like Google on a page. One of the cool things that we've talked about doing in the past is, kind of create a fake page or a fake piece of content or a fake site, and then, make up a keyword that's kind of a nonsensical word, and then add that thing to things like title tags, add it to your image information, add it to H1s and H2s, and add some lorem ipsum text, and then add that fake keyword into the lorem ipsum text, and see how making changes, such as removing it from H1s or H2s or removing it from different things, has an impact. This can be similarly done with content using things like hashtags, image tags, understanding how video content is served up, etc. When we look at video content specifically, one of the things that's really interesting is obviously the title and the description that we place on the video and the tags that we choose for the video are really important. But the reviews of the video and the types of words that people are describing back in the reviews may be just as important. You can also do the transcription services on YouTube, but we also want to look and see if you were to transcribe a video, how is the algorithm understanding what the content of the video is about based on potentially a transcription and the keywords that are spoken during the video, or some other factor of the content in that way. So we want to make sure that we can really understand that if we're marketers, if there is something to be had in this transcription concept of the video itself, how are we placing kind of, again, our keywords and our core concepts closer to the front of the video to make sure that kind of points are made in that order. One of the topics that we address a lot too is how do we know, especially for platforms that are owned by a larger place, so Instagram with Facebook and kind of these different areas of kind of cross-pollination, how much impact your marketing on one channel will have on your findability on another channel. These things sometimes are very transparent, and folks from those platforms will specifically share that information with you and talk about kind of how cross-pollination and promotion works from a paid standpoint. What we don't get a lot of insight on is how that impact works from an organic standpoint. So from a straight up findability, like what happens if standpoint. We're also seeing that these lines are getting harder and harder to understand from desktop versus mobile. So as we've discussed previously in other episodes, as search kind of continues to have a lot of this expansion into Google doing mobile first and then speed updates and things like that, how are alternative search engines changing the way that they serve up content depending on mobile versus desktop implementations? So for example, will I start getting different results if I look at Pinterest while I'm on my mobile device physically in a home improvement store versus if I look at it on a desktop? And what does that look like as those things change? How does that change for my Amazon stuff? So like if I'm at Costco or Best Buy and I look at Amazon for a television, does it understand that I'm looking on my mobile device for that specific product and where I am, and that maybe I'm doing product review research versus actually looking to make a purchase? And how do those things change how product placement and how they're serving up content, and then how do we as marketers actually address that issue? So I think that for us, a few things to keep in mind, as I mentioned, if you're going to do kind of the experimental version and do some trial and error. I think that one of the things that we're seeing is that fundamentals still really matter, right? That means ensuring that you've done your research. This all starts with research. Do you know how somebody would find or get to your product on Amazon, on Pinterest, on Instagram? How would your video be shown on YouTube? Why? Like outside of paying for promotions on these channels, how would somebody organically find you? If you don't know how to do that, and you don't know what that is, then you don't know how to optimize the content in order to do better. The other interesting part on a lot of this is, so with Amazon specifically, a lot of this content is, specifically created for Amazon. But in the case of Pinterest, these images may be things that you're including on other content that are then pinned by other users. So there's also content that people create specifically for a Pinterest or an Instagram. But in the instance that you're not doing that, you need to make sure, again, all images have been optimized for findability. All videos can be optimized for findability. We actually did a couple of years ago, interestingly, when video content was really on the rise, we did a video SEO Found Friday episode. And that video is actually still available on our YouTube channel. And I think there's actually a SlideShare on it on slideshare.net/Ginzametrics or /DemandSphere. And you can go to our content for that, or you can ping us and ask us and we'll send it to you. But we did kind of a quick rundown on video SEO and optimizing all of those aspects of your content, whether you intended for it to be shared in that way or not, can have a really big impact later on down the line as people start to kind of really cross-promote content across all of these different platforms. And because all these different platforms have their own algorithms, covering the basics is your best shot. So again, the basics. Do your research for keywords. Understand, go to those platforms individually, not only your Google ranking, but your Amazon ranking, looking at these other factors, and understand when you search for different things, what's being shown to you, what's being suggested for other searches, what might you have missed. I even still really feel positively about small focus groups. So find some consumers of your product and ask them to tell you when they purchase your products how it is that they're finding them, what they're searching for when they come across it. The answers really may surprise you and may help you optimize outside of some competitors who may be kind of still stuck in, like a more straightforward version of the keyword descriptions. Because we've also seen, when we talk about trends, and I think we talked about this last week or the week before on Are You Tracking Enough Keywords, is the long tail searches, these like longer description searches that are continuing to expand as people become more digitally native, use voice search. All of these different things are impacting the length of our queries. So how do you know, based on kind of all of these different query lengths, how your content will show up and how to optimize? Again, back to doing the research, doing some focus groups, doing some deeper dives. There's also a lot to be said for doing some competitor research here, right? Understanding when you type things in, who else shows up, and then what else do they provide, and what does that mean for you? What do their typical audience members on an Instagram or on a YouTube or whatever look like, and how might that impact what kind of levers you can pull from a marketing standpoint in order to kind of get back on top. When we talk about Google, we talk about these like universal search elements like knowledge panel and answer box and shopping results and video and all these different things that are kind of like rank position 0, right? And what that means, because Google is now holding people on the search engine result page instead of navigating them away to your content, which impacts traffic and a lot of other things kind of further down the marketing line and throughout our ecosystem. So when people are navigating to these other platforms first and doing searches, this is kind of a different area than what we're dealing with Google, because Google has figured out a way to make its search engine result page a destination of its own, where people may not ever need to move to your content. When you're on a Pinterest or an Instagram, people are directly seeing, liking, repinning, reposting, sharing your content from there. This is still a really big opportunity, right? This is a place that we aren't encumbered by some of those other cloudy universal search factors that a more traditional search engine may serve up. Now, Amazon has actually figured out a way to incorporate their own style of universal search elements. And that's stuff like Amazon recommends or available for Prime or sponsored posts and all these things that kind of shove other stuff further and further down the list of product recommendations, right? So as we see that happen, we know that this is also starting to happen on Instagram. We are now seeing like sponsored content and stories. We're now seeing things where you can click to learn more and much more kind of integrated experiential content advertisement. These are all things that, because all of these platforms are unique, require an eye to detail on each one of these platforms and how they work. Now, some larger organizations have folks that are specifically dedicated to figuring out and handling each and every single platform. And then smaller places are people that have kind of a more like digital strategist native who are looking at how is it that I actually kind of create those create that lift organically for this content, have to kind of regularly do research, because the thing is, these algorithms are changing all the time. The way that the advertising opportunities, the content integration opportunities, all of this stuff changes so frequently that we have so many different opportunities, and what worked a month ago may not work next month. Lastly, before we jump off of here, because we always try to keep these to 20 to 30 minutes so that you guys can consume them on a lunch break or on a car ride, is our concept of influencer marketing and what that means on alternative search engines. So obviously people think of a lot of times traditionally when we say influencer marketing of like a Kardashian type of a situation where somebody's like, I love this specific lip gloss, or, this is my favorite pair of jeans. That's still really important, but what we're now starting to see and understand is how influence is actually determined. So, what actually constitutes an influencer? Is it based solely on followers or amount of shares or things like that? Or are there other factors? So, like, how influential is the influencer to real people who have purchasing ability, right? So, is this person just followed by a bunch of bots? Or, is this person influential, but the people that are following them rarely make purchasing decisions? Or does this person have fewer followers, but a really high purchase influence? We even see this on things like review sites where certain people are power reviewers or whose reviews are highly trusted because they, buy or use those products on a regular basis. These are other factors that are going to continue to impact how these alternative search engines deal with marketing content, how they deal with brands, how they deal with product placement, how they deal with influencer marketing who is trying to impact brand and product placement. So as this continues to evolve, I go back and I say this, and it's really two separate things to me. It's one, stick with the basics at the bare minimum. Make sure all of your content is optimized because you never know when it might appear on one of these other platforms. If you're also building content, consider the platform that you're sharing it on. And if it is an alternative search engine, do your research and make sure that you're optimizing that content to be found for the types of ways that somebody would actually find that content and search for it. The second part is keep your eye on the industry, and we're going to do the same and keep you updated as these individual things change. And we typically use things like longer form blog post content to dive into the specifics of how individual platforms make algorithm changes as we see them. So that's typically in like a blog post format. But keep an eye on when you see these shifts, right? So like I said, we offer obviously our typical search engine and content rank tracking, but we also now offer Amazon and some other things as well in there, and we also can track YouTube content. Track your content across some of these different things, and if you start to see a huge dip for something, that's a signifier that says maybe something changed on their end as to how they are as to how they're choosing what content to show for a specific area. And so then it gives you a jumping off point to do a little bit of research and say, hey, I wonder what ended up happening there. So those are kind of my tips on dealing with some alternative search engines. I'd love to hear more about kind of how you feel about what's going on in that space. So always feel free to reach out. I'm Erin, ERIN, at demandsphere.com. You can also find us on our YouTube channel, on our SlideShare channel, and on Twitter at demandsphere. Until next week, thank you so much for joining, and we will see you guys soon.